Candidates, good afternoon. I'm Mr. Mhlomo. I'm back here with you today for the presentation of Economics Paper 2. Please join me as we prepare for our Paper 2 that will be written tomorrow on the 21st of September. Remember, we are dealing with preparatory examination. I'm trying to add value so that you can be prepared for the paper tomorrow. Our Paper 2, as usual, consists of 150 marks. You will be allocated 2 hours. And we have 2 topics, which are the main topics, namely microeconomics as well as contemporary economic issues. Please join me. Let's see what we have for you. The following are the lesson objectives that will be achieved during the course of this lesson. This is our Paper 2, like I've mentioned. So our objectives are very simple. Remember, after this lesson, you will be able to answer some questions from lower order to higher order in Economics Paper 2. You will be able to analyze data response and be able to answer those questions from lower to higher. You will be able to answer the essay because we break down the structure of an essay. The lesson will also allow you to answer paragraph questions which are middle order and higher order for 8 marks. So the structure of the paper, as usual, we know we are dealing with the microeconomics, and then we are also dealing with the contemporary economic issues today. Remember, our question 1, as section A, consists of both main topics, microeconomics as well as contemporary economic issues. And then our section B, question 2, consists of microeconomics only. So if you are strong in microeconomics, you will be having a choice, then you will choose doing micro instead of issues. And then question 3 consists of contemporary economic issues. So if you are strong in economic issues, you'll be choosing question 3. And then our question 4 consists of the combination of both microeconomics and economic issues. Section B, remember, is 80 marks. So you choose 2 questions out of 3. And our section C, we have question 5, which is microeconomics only, and essay there is coming from micro. And then we have our question number 6, which is economic issues. Remember, our essay is 40 marks. In the essay, we have your introduction for 2 marks. We have your body, which is separated into 2, where you have your main part for 26 marks. And then you have your additional part for 10 marks and conclusion for 2 marks. So our paper is 150 marks, like I've said. And then in a question paper, your paper is 2 hours. Ensure that you are more efficient on the paper, because some of you did not complete paper 1 complaining about the time, but the time will never change anytime soon. So it is very important for you to be prepared and be efficient. And then we have 6 questions in the paper. Section A is compulsory. Section B, there are 3 questions, you answer only 2. Section C, there are 2 questions, you answer only 1. Like I've said, section A is compulsory. And then section B, there are 3 questions. And then we have question 2 to question 4. Then we have to choose 2 of them. And then section C, we have 2 questions, question 5 and 6, we just choose 1. It's been mentioned. Section A is out of 30 marks. So we have 1.1, which is the multiple choice. We are given 4 options to choose 1 that is correct. Each answer is 2 marks. Then we have your 16 marks. Matching items, column A and column B. Each answer is 1 mark. We are given 8. Then it's 8 marks that you achieve there. And then 1.3, as usual, you give the term on the given definition. And then each answer is 1 mark. They're all 6. You get your 6 marks. Then that is 30. And then this is a description of topics per question. Question A, like I've said, combination of both micro and economic issues. And then section B, which is question 2, we have microeconomics that consists of perfect markets, imperfect markets, and market failures. And then question 3, these are economic issues whereby you come across inflation, tourism, as well as environmental sustainability. And then question number 4, you have the combination of both the microeconomics as well as economic issues, meaning you have perfect markets, imperfect markets, and market failures. Then you combine it with inflation, tourism, and environmental sustainability. That gives you 40 marks. And then question 5 is microeconomics. So if you are strong in micro, be prepared. Be aware that you will have to choose question 5 because you are too strong in there. If you are strong in economic issues, then you choose question 6. But if you are strong in both, you are spoiled of choices, then you will choose any of your preference that will be giving you more marks. So we have the multiple choice, where you need to get most of the marks. Remember, it can happen that you are struggling with section B or section C. You need to ensure that you capitalize in section A. Out of 30, get more marks in there so that you will that will boost you as you go forward to section B and section C. So it is very important for you to pay most of your attention in section A and get those marks. And then as you move to section B and section C, you already have marks, maybe more than 20 in section A. That will give you an advantage to overcome whatever challenge you are having. Remember, it is very easy for you to pass this paper or any paper of economics, because you must just get 45 over 150. That will be giving you level 2. So going further, we add 15. You must get 60 over 150. That will be giving you level 3. So we keep on adding 15 until we get to 120, where if you get 120, you get your level 7. So it is easy. It's not difficult. It's just that you happen to make it difficult. You must have a formula on to say, in which section am I going to get more marks? In which question am I going to get more marks? Then you keep on increasing your marks. Be accumulative. Do not waste marks. If you guys can be efficient and read questions with understanding, you will never get below level 2. So I see it being a very simple thing for you to get, only if you know what you are going there to do. Let's avoid getting level 1s, because really they are not giving you any spirit or any encouragement going to the final examination. So please push by all means to ensure that you get above 45 marks over 150 on each paper, because the failure to do so, that means you will really struggle going to the final exam. You will need to triple your efforts as you want to pass the examination. So you must read each statement with understanding and have an answer in your mind, and then you simply check if the answer is there if we are dealing with 1.1. You must be precise when choosing. Do not just guess, because some of you go in the examination already having some answers that will lead to you getting 0. Do not guess an answer. Ensure that you deal with it according to the topic, contextualize the given statements, and then choose the correct answer. And then you must not leave anything unattended. It is very important that you don't skip. Do not leave anything unattended. Answer everything that should be answered in there. And then do not write an answer on top of another answer. Ensure that if the answer is wrong, you believe is wrong, you scratch, you write it on the side. And then do not give us options to say A or B or C or D. That is wrong. You can't be given option and then you also give us option. That is wrong. So please ensure that you do the right thing. Do not write one answer on top of another answer. Yes, like I've said, ensure that will be giving you 16 marks. And then 1.2, we're matching items in the column A and column B. It is very important for you to start with those answers that you are sure you know. But then the other thing that will work for you, if you look at at column A, ensure that you are able to give descriptions for those what you call concepts that are given. It will be easy for you to simply look for the corresponding answer. But if you don't understand the given concept, it will be very hard for you to get the answer. You will end up guessing and mixing these answers and get 0. We have seen that happening. Be aware that if you get one answer wrong in column A and column B, that will mean you might be losing 2 marks by one answer being wrong, because you take an answer, maybe 1.2.1, the answer for 1.2.1 is taken to another, maybe 1.2.3. That means you have 2 answers wrong. So ensure that you are precise. Use elimination method by starting with what you know, and then after you have exhausted, you start to check now which answers that you are not sure of. Then you can see and try to link those given options in column B with column A concept. Then you can get the answer correct. Avoid leaving spaces in there, because if you do so, you render yourself to fail in section A. And then in 1.3, we know you must ensure that you know your content, know your terminologies. Then you can provide the answer. Ensure that you don't provide or give abbreviations, because they won't be marked. Even acronyms won't be marked. So just provide the answer in full if ever the answer can be abbreviated or it contains a certain acronym. That will be giving you 6 marks. Then you have your 30 marks. So we have our section B. This gives you just example of section B questions in our question 2, question 3, and question 4. So some examples are as follows. Name any 2 objectives of anti-monopoly policies. Remember, the monopoly is one of those market structures where there is only one seller. So if we talk about anti-monopoly policies, we are referring to those policies that allows a high level of competition within the market. not having only one business supplying the entire market, because that will be leading to high level of inefficiencies, which include both technical and allocative inefficiency. There should be no restrictions to entry. Yes, there should be high level of competition, meaning businesses should be free to enter the market so that we will be having this thing of anti-monopoly. Curb the economic power, meaning business should not be having that economic power. So there should be what you call evenly or the commonly within the market. So businesses should all be having same opportunities. No business should be having the power over other businesses within the market because maybe of some legislation or because of some restriction that have been set. Business had to become competitive. So business must be very much competitive in the market. New trade agreement, there should be trade agreements within the market or within the economy. Name any two objectives of the Competition Policy. So we know the Competition Policy Act of South Africa that was formed to ensure healthy competition within the economy, and then also restricting power abuse by monopolies and oligopolies, ensuring the fair competition within the economy, within the market, attracting FDIs, etc. So let's look, prevent monopolies from abusing their power, and then regulate information of makers and acquisitions who wish to exercise market power. To stop firms from using restrictive practices like fixing prices and dividing markets. We know if we talk about restrictive practices, we talk about those practices that are anti-competitive, that prevent other firms from entering the market, that are abusing the power within the market so that they can dominate the market for them to be main decision makers and drive out other firms from the market. And then name any two criteria for an activity to be regarded as tourism. Remember, for any activity to be regarded as tourism, there must be a purpose for the visit, and then also the visit should not be taking more than a year. And also there should be no compensation on the visit, so we can regard that as a part of tourism. No remuneration or payment that should be given or expected, and then minimum of 1 night, and then minimum of a year. So it should not be above a year if we say the activity is a part of tourism. And then also traveling distance from more than 160 kilometers, meaning if it's below 160 kilometers, that cannot be regarded as a part of tourism or a tourism activity. Name any two examples of fixed costs. Remember, fixed costs are those costs that do not vary or change with the output. As much as we produce more, but fixed cost remains constant for the given period of time. We talk about rent, administrative, insurance, depreciation, salaries, interest on capital, as well as property taxes. Remember, this goes opposite to the variable costs, which are costs that will always change with the output. As we produce more goods within the business, the variable cost will also be increasing. If we produce less, the variable cost will be decreasing. It is very important for you to be able to distinguish between the two, fixed cost and variable cost, and provide a relevant example. Give two examples of explicit cost for FM. And then remember, explicit cost goes together with the implicit cost. So explicit costs are those costs that are used in the operation of the business for daily basis. We talk about rent, interest, wages. Give any two measures of inflation. Then we have a long list here. We talk about indexes, that is producer price index and the consumer price index. We talk about weighting, whereby we simply check if consumers are demanding most of durable goods or luxury goods, or most they are demanding basic goods for living. We talk about inflation rate. This goes to inflation rate, and then we talk about the GDP deflator. And then checking some other examples. Name any two bodies responsible for regulating competition in South Africa. We talk about three bodies, namely we have the Competition Commission, which mainly investigate the alleged anti-competitive behavior or practice by a certain business. And then after investigation, it will combine its findings and transfer them to the Competition Tribunal. The tribunal will also do its own investigation, and then after investigating, it will decide if it accepts findings by the Competition Commission or not. Then it will make a final decision after doing its own investigation if ever the firm is guilty of misconduct or not guilty. And then we have also Tribunal Appeals Court, whereby if the business is unhappy with the decision or the fine that have been slapped on it, then the firm can appeal on the Tribunal Appeals Court. Then Appeals Court will do its own findings, and then it will decide if, after doing investigation, if the firm is indeed guilty or not, based on findings. And then if the firm is not guilty, the fine that was imposed by the Competition Tribunal will be withdrawn. But if the firm is found guilty, the fine will remain. So those are three bodies we are talking about under Commission Policy Act of South Africa. Commission, we talk about the Commission Tribunal as well as Commission Appeals Court or Tribunal Appeals Court. Mention two types of oligopolies. We have two types of oligopolies, namely the pure oligopoly and differentiated oligopoly. Remember, if we talk about the pure oligopoly, we talk about the oligopolists that produce homogeneous products. What do you mean by homogeneous product? Those are products that are identical or similar to one another. And then differentiated oligopoly is that oligopoly's business that produces differentiated products. If we talk of differentiated products, we refer to those goods that look, slightly similar. However, they have some differences based on branding. So we have pure oligopoly as well as differentiated oligopoly. Then we continue with some lower order questions in there. Give any two examples of consumer inflation. So in here we have various types of consumer inflation. Then we have CPI inflation. We also have CPI-X inflation. Then we have core inflation. We also have administered inflation. If we talk about the CPI inflation, we talk about CPI inflation or headline inflation. That's an inflation that has not been adjusted. But if we talk of CPI-X inflation, that's an inflation that has been adjusted. If we talk about the core inflation, we refer to the inflation that excludes goods with highly volatile prices. If we talk of volatile price, we refer to price that can increase or decrease over time. They cannot be stable. They simply change anytime. So that kind of the consumer inflation has also been adjusted because it does not include those goods with highly volatile prices. And then we talk about administered inflation. That is the inflation that occurs due to the government intervention, when the government intervenes by setting some prices for some goods and services in the economy. So that's a CPI or headline inflation. We have CPI-X inflation. Remember that CPI inflation is always higher or bigger than CPI-X inflation because CPI has not been adjusted. While CPI-X has been adjusted, it does not have an effect on mortgage bond or interest rates. And then we have core inflation that has also been adjusted. And then we have administered inflation. Mention any two types of monopolies. So in this case, we talk about the likes of natural monopolies, artificial monopolies. Remember, you must be able to give the difference between the two. If we talk of natural monopolies, we refer to those monopolies that occur based on economical in nature, meaning whatever happens, barriers to entry that exist in there are not, caused by anyone, but they are economies of nature, such as economies of scale. When the business becomes a monopoly due to the fact that the business is protected by what we call economies of scale, the firm can produce more goods and services at the lower cost per unit. And then other firms will find it difficult to enter and compete with this monopoly business due to the fact that they won't be able to stand the competition since the firm produce more at the lower cost and sell at the lower cost. If they are forced to come in, they will be driven out of the market very, very soon due to the fact that they are producing at the higher cost and sell at the higher cost, which is known as the economies of scale. And then we talk about artificial monopoly that exist because of legislation where the government intervene, maybe by setting some laws and bylaws to prevent entry, or the market entry, allowing that business to be the only producer of a certain product in the market. That is done by the means of patents. So we have natural monopolies, and then we have artificial monopolies. We also have local monopoly, which is the business which becomes the only supplier of a particular product in a certain area or in a certain geographical area, even though there are other businesses existing in a certain area or, some kilometers away. But the business in this particular geographical area is the only supplier. So it becomes a monopoly locally, hence we call that one a local monopoly. And then we have state-owned monopoly, which are the monopolies that are owned by the government or established and run by the government. And then we continue. And then give any two examples of perfect market. So here we refer to the likes of Johannesburg Security Exchange. And then we talk about the foreign exchange market, and we talk about what we call agricultural produces. Here they come. And then we continue with the next question and see some examples. Mention any two revenues that incur in a business. So we have three of them. We have average revenues, total revenues, and marginal revenues. Those are revenues that incur in the business. And then we continue with some examples. Give any two inefficiencies that occur in the market. So inefficiencies. In this case, we refer to allocative inefficiency. Remember, this one occurs when the business failed to allocate resources in the best way. That can lead to either undersupply or oversupply of goods and services. Whenever available resources are not used at the optimum level, that is known as allocative inefficiency. And then you have productive inefficiency or technical inefficiency. When the produced goods and services do not satisfy the consumer utility, there might be more demand than the supply. And then also the product produced might not be able to satisfy the consumer utility, maybe because of product nature or because of allocative inefficiency. And then we also have Pareto inefficiency that occurs when it is impossible to make someone better without making someone worse off. And then mention any two types of collusion that occur in the oligopoly. So remember, collusion occurs when two or more firms within the same industry make joint decision making. So if ever firms are colluding, they are trying to kill the competition amongst themselves so that they will have power to manipulate or exploit consumers to higher prices. So collusion can occur in two ways. We have implicit collusion and explicit collusion. If we talk of the implicit collusion, we refer to the collusion that occur between two or more business within the industry without any formal agreement or formal discussion. That's when one firm decides to increase its price and then other firms copy the strategy without any formal agreement. So that occurs under the price leadership process, which is the process that occurs when one firm determines the price in the market on behalf of other firms. So the firm will be deciding on its own price and production techniques, then other firms will be copying the strategy without having any agreement with that other firm. And then we talk about also explicit collusion. If we talk of explicit collusion, we also call that one an overt collusion. It is the collusion that occurs when there is a formal agreement between two or more business within the same market to manipulate prices and also production techniques. So they do price fixing together. It can happen under the cartel, which is what we call the association between two or more businesses within the same industry where they discuss prices and production techniques. So each and every firm under oligopoly, remember, has a say over the price. So under the cartel, if firms are voting and agree to increase the price, even if one firm did not agree, but it's a part of the process, because if the majority says we increase the price, then the firm is also the part of the decision making to increase the price. Remember that under oligopoly, there's a market interdependence whereby firms are very much dependent on each other based on decision making. If one firm make one profitable decision, other firms will also be able to copy the strategy without any formal discussion, because they know if ever one firm make a profitable decision, that might cost them on their market share and consumers, including sales. Therefore, they will try also to copy the strategy without any formal agreement, which happens under price leadership and also implicit collusion, where there is no formal agreement. Remember, implicit collusion can also be known as hidden collusion or tacit collusion. So here we go, implicit collusion, hidden or tacit, as well as explicit or overt collusion. Give any two reasons for cost-benefit analysis. Why do we do CBA? Remember, we move straight to the market failure. Firstly, CBA is the comparison, or cost-benefit analysis is the comparison between social benefits and social cost within the business. So for the government to approve a certain project, especially large projects such as infrastructure project, there should be CBA or cost-benefit analysis to check social costs and social benefits of the project, so that it will be able to make informed decision. Because if the government simply approve the project without checking how will the society be affected and the economy be affected, that way it might lead to negative externalities being more than positive externalities, which will be bad for the society and the economy in that particular project. So let's check to ensure that informed decisions are made, and then also to determine if the project is economically worthwhile or not, and then also to compare social costs and benefits associated with the project. There is a long list for these reasons. Mention two negative effects of minimum wage. Remember, the minimum wage is one of those methods used by the government to redistribute income and wealth in order to reduce economic inequalities in South Africa. If the government legislates minimum wage, it is mainly trying to ensure that there is no much income gap between the population or between people in the country, allowing some industries to pay people or workers a little bit higher wage level than lower, so that they will be able to afford and have improved standards of living. So if ever there is a minimum wage imposed imposed by the government, it can happen that firms find it difficult to pay for those workers because minimum wage increase the production cost and labor cost. For that reason, firms might end up retrenching some workers so that they can keep up with the minimum wage. So that is one of those bad effects of minimum wage. And also, with the retrenchment, there will be a high level of supply for labor because people or the labor force will be interested to supply due to the fact that they will be earning reasonable salaries. However, there will be less demand for labor, leading to the excess supply of labor while the demand is less due to the fact that the cost of labor is increasing and firms now are finding it very expensive to employ workers. Increased labor cost, increased unemployment in the country, because if ever like labor cost increases, firms will decide to retrench some workers. As workers are being retrenched, there will be a high level of unemployment. So what can the government do to overcome the situation? It can be involved again by giving or by offering employment subsidies, which will be compensating now these businesses to pay a certain amount of wage, and the government intervene by a certain payment of the wage so that people won't be retrenched or workers won't be retrenched, and then they will be maintained in the business. Give any two negative effects of maximum prices. Remember, if we talk about the maximum prices, we talk about what we call the price ceilings. Those are prices that are administered by the government to be below equilibrium. The government intervened by setting these prices so that people can afford those goods and services because they are believed to be very important for the social welfare and social well-being. Then the state will intervene by imposing what we call the maximum prices or price ceilings. Remember, if ever that has been, this price has been imposed, that will lead to the fact that firms will be demotivated to produce more of these goods and services because they are not profitable enough. Therefore, the state will end up intervening by supplying those goods within the economy because they are important for social welfare and social well-being. So there will be a greater demand for these goods, only to find that the market is not willing to supply them because they are very cheap. Then the government intervenes by supplying on its own these goods and services. Market shortage or undersupply, they will be undersupplied because firms will be demotivated to make the provision or to supply these goods due to the fact that they are very cheap. And then establishment of black market. Yes, if ever these goods now are sold by the government, the market is undersupplying, there will be some of those people or business deciding to sell these goods illegally, which is a part of the black market. Give any two negative externalities of tourism. Remember that if we have tourism activities, there can be high prices for people in the local area. Let's say we have an attraction around the area. So businesses in the area will be inflating their prices because they know the area is a hotspot or is having an attraction. So more people from different areas come and visit the area. So what will happen? Business will increase their prices to increase their profits. So people that are living around the area will be affected by high prices because of these inflated prices. And then also, tourists leave their carbon footprints whenever they tour in the area in large numbers. They will be also degrading the environment, and then they will also damaging. That will be leading to environmental stress. So let's check. Increase in price for locals, meaning local people will be affected. Destruction of flora and fauna, both living and non-living things, will be affected. Increase in level of pollution, yes. We know that if ever there are more cars flowing into the area, that will be causing most of pollution in the area, especially because cars are burning fossil fuel. Environmental stress. And then high level of traffic congestion. And then mention any two intentional measures to ensure environmental sustainability. And then we have biodiversity loss, and then we have chemical waste, we have hazardous waste, and then we have climate change, and then we have loss of indigenous knowledge. So in this case, we talk about the international problems. These are international problems. If we talk about measures agreed upon, we refer to Rio de Janeiro, we refer to Rio 5, and then we refer to Stockholm Conference, we talk about COP17, we talk about Basel Convention, etc. And then these are questions now in the middle order. Remember, if you get to this part, you must be able to explain or write in full sentences. Avoid the hinting in this case. Ensure that you answer in the full sentence for you to get maximum of 2 marks. Avoid answering on the negative or positive, then you leave it there, you will get 0. How can the environmental subsidies be used to ensure sustainable development in South Africa? Remember, if we talk about environmental subsidies, we are referring to subsidies given by the government to those organizations or businesses that protect protect the environment, that do everything to sustain the environment. So they are rewarded by the government so that they will keep up by protecting the environment. So the question is, how can they be used to ensure environmental subsidies? So the state can intervene by giving more environmental subsidies to business so that they will keep on maintaining and protecting the environment, also recycling the used material so that there won't be much pollution within the area. Subsidies can be granted to business to reduce environmental damage by recycling bottles, cans, and cardboard. The government can subsidize new technology that save energy, such as energy-saving lights, bulbs, or solar geysers, air power to reduce air pollution. Promoting environmentally friendly substitutes like unleaded petrol. And then we continue with some of the middle order. Why are merit goods normally undersupplied by the market? We know that merit goods are goods that are beneficial in the society. Those are goods that are having only positive externalities. We refer to the likes of education and healthcare. So they are undersupplied by the market due to the fact that people are not willing to pay for these goods and services. So even if the market is willing to supply them, but people are not willing to pay for those goods and services. For that sake, the state intervened to supply those goods because they are important for social welfare. So if people do not get to access these goods, then that will be undermining their living standard, including the healthcare. The market only produces goods that are profitable. Some goods are highly desirable for general welfare of people, but not highly rated by the market. Private costs exceed private benefit. If they had to be paid for, relatively little would be consumed. What impact does preservation have on the environment? We know that if ever resources are being well preserved, they will last longer and they won't be damaged. Even the future generation will be able to get the benefit that we are enjoying right now. So environment will be well sustained and be protected if ever we have preservation in place. Preservation prevents the extinction of plants and animal species. It ensures that non-renewable resources are not lost forever. They can be used, but in a good way, not being over-consumed. Even if they are renewable, they must be used in a manner that will allow them to be sustained, because if we use them now immediately, they will be completed for a certain period and be able to be recovered in future, which is bad for the environment. Why will the economic profit made by a monopolistic competitor disappear in the long run? Remember, if we talk about the monopolistic competition, we refer to the market structure that exists when there are many buyers and sellers. It contains the hybrid structure because it has both features for the perfect market as well as the monopoly. So under the monopolistic competition, we say the profit in the long run will decrease. Remember, under monopolistic competition, there is high level of competition. The entry in the market is completely free, meaning new firms are free to enter the market without any restrictions, which then result to what? It results to, as many businesses are entering the market, that will lead to the loss of profits by existing firms. So the profit will always be reduced in the long run due to the fact that there's a high level of competition and firms are entering the market without any limits, which result to consumers being shared amongst the firms. Profits attract new businesses easily into the market, making it more competitive. Increased competition will lead to decrease in prices, which will reduce profits for existing businesses. Remember that if new businesses enter the market, they don't come with their consumers. They find consumers existing within the market. So as they come in, consumers will be shifting to this new business. So as they shift to this new business to check what is being supplied there, they are leaving other business that will then end up making normal profit in the long run. There can be increase in number of substitute products produced within the, which will reduce the demand. So if ever more firms are being added, there will be even more substitute. Remember, under monopolistic, firms produce these differentiated products that can replace each other easily. This will eventually lead to normal profit by the monopolistic competitor in the long run. Remember, a long run is that period of time which is very long enough, and then all inputs are flexible. How can the tourism sector help to reduce poverty amongst the local people in in the community? We know, remember, the tourism is labor intensive. It employs all levels, also all levels of labor, namely skilled, semi-skilled, and non-skilled labor. And people that because of tourism, people can be employed while they don't even have skills, which means they will be learning through the job that they're employed to do. So in that case, tourism create enough job opportunities that are labor intensive, meaning they don't use most of machines, but they employ most of workers. So it is very important for you to note that tourism will always result to the job creation within the area, and then it is labor intensive. People will be getting opportunities to start their own informal business within the area, such as street vendors, which will be allowing them to earn income. And then let's look at the answer. Local unemployed people can earn an income by supplying of goods and services to tourists. And then informal sector local businesses are established, which become a source of income for those people in the area. Local small businesses can easily form partnership with formal businesses to supply their products. Why would high inflation lead to retrenchment of workers? So remember, if there's a high level of inflation, that will lead to less demand for goods and services because people will then afford less. So for that sake, the inflation, as it's being very, very high, it will result to workers being retrenched because of less demand for goods and services. And then businesses will find it unnecessary to keep high level or more workers within themselves, resulting to what? Resulting to some workers being released from work due to the fact that the demand for goods is very, very low, meaning they are also producing less. And then high inflation would result in lower production where businesses require less labor, so some people will be released from work. Lower demand for goods and services become a disincentive for business to produce more, which decreases the demand for labor. And then why would a lack of information for entrepreneurs lead to market failure? So remember, if we're faced by lack of information, if entrepreneurs are not having enough information about prevailing market conditions, they will be making uninformed decisions. So if they make uninformed decisions, they will be very much inefficient. So it is very important that entrepreneurs obtain adequate or enough information about prevailing market conditions. So let's check before we go to the short break. A lack of information regarding cost and availability of factors of production will result to misallocation of resources, will result in inefficiency in production. Remember, it is very important for entrepreneurs or producers to know the market where they can find cheap capital goods or cheap equipment. So if they don't have or they are not informed about the market that can offer them less expensive or cheap machines, they will be buying machines from the very expensive market, only to find that there is a market somewhere that is offering the same quality of machines at the lower cost. So it is very important for them to be well informed and have all information that is needed for them to make informed decision within the market. For now, we are going for the short break. We'll be back soon.
I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, what do I want? Do I want to become an A student or do I want to become an average student? Number 2, I want you to ask yourself, how do you plan on getting there? Are you going to put more extra hours or are you going to just sleep? Number 3, who will be with you in this journey? Because it is important that we associate ourselves with students who have the same vision as us, who want to become a student, who want to put in the extra work, who want to become better at what they do. Unsuccessful people do not plan. They just let life happen to them. But successful people are planning on how they want their lives to be. And right now, you plan on how you want your results at the end of the year to be like. I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, what do I want? Do I want to become an A student or do I want to become an average student? Number 2, I want you to ask yourself, how do you plan on getting there? Are you going to put more extra hours or are you going to just sleep? Number 3, who will be with you in this journey? Because it is important that we associate ourselves with students who have the same vision as us, who want to become A students, who want to put in the extra work, who want to become better at what they do. Unsuccessful people do not plan, they just let life happen to them. But successful people are planning on how they want their lives to be. And right now, you plan on how you want your results at the end of the year to be like. I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, what do I want? Do I want to become an A student or do I want to become an average student? Number 2, I want you to ask yourself, how do you plan on getting there? Are you going to put more extra hours or are you going to just sleep? Number 3, who will be with you in this journey? Because it is important that we associate ourselves with students who have the same vision as us, who want to become A students, who want to put in the extra work, who want to become better at what they do. Unsuccessful people do not plan, they just let life happen to them. But successful people are planning on how they want their lives to be. And right now, you plan on how you want your results at the end of the year to be like. Believe in yourself. Believe a little more in yourself. Because to those that believe, nothing is impossible. You have done this before. You have passed your tests before. You have went into a higher grade before. It is possible because you have done it before. Do not doubt yourself. Keep believing in yourself. Keep pushing because this can be done and you can be great.
Okay, candidate, welcome back. After this short break, let's continue. So we're still on the multi order questions. How does the unfair distribution of income result to market failure? Remember, if the income is unfairly distributed within the market, that will lead to goods and services being only produced for those who can afford. And also, if the income is unfairly distributed very few people will be receiving or will be getting more goods and services because they have buying power, and then more people will be getting less goods and services. So there will be a market imbalance which will be leading to businesses under supplying goods and services because not everybody can afford, but very few people can afford. So goods are mainly produced for a certain group of people that can afford. So let's check. If income is unfairly distributed, few goods and services are produced for many people, with more goods and services that are produced for few people. In the market, goods are produced only for those who can afford, neglecting the needy people who cannot afford. How can the appreciation of the currency or South African rand against US dollar affect international tourism? If our currency is appreciating or becoming even strong, that will mean it will be very difficult. It will be easy for South Africans to tour to US, but US people, let's see, if our currency is getting very much stronger, or appreciate, that will mean we will be able to afford US dollar. So we will be able to tour to US because our currency is stronger, while their currency is depreciating, it becomes weak. So it will be difficult for them to tour into the country. So US tourists will be decreasing to South Africa, while South African tourists will be increasing to US. Strengthening South African rand can make US dollar more affordable to South Africans. Cheap US dollar can result to more South Africans touring to US. There will be a decline in US tourists to South Africa because of their depreciated currency, so it will be weak. They will find it expensive to afford our rand in South Africa. And then we are given the data response here. It is very important for you to be able to analyze what kind of monopoly is this one. You can check between natural and artificial. You can see this big fish is taking all of these ones, meaning it is trying to monopolize. That means there are some small businesses that are existing in here. We take them as small businesses, so it decides to buy them out of the market. So that is regarded as what we call an artificial monopoly, because it buys out competitors so that it will remain as the only supplier of a particular product within the market. So you go through the data response. So let's check. Identify the type of monopoly depicted in the above cartoon. Obviously, we talk about artificial, legal, or statutory monopoly. If we say it's legal, it is because it exists due to the fact that there are some regulations, or the government intervene through some laws and ensure that that business is protected to become the only supplier of the product, meaning patents play a huge role in to ensure that the business becomes the only supplier. And then also, what message is reflected by the cartoon above? An actual monopoly buying out competitors from the market. And then briefly describe the term patent as used in economics. Remember, if we talk of the patent, we refer to what we call it's a legal document. It can be a document that allows one business to be the only producer of a particular product for a certain period of time. So we talk about exclusive rights given to the business to be the only supplier of a certain product. It gives an exclusive or legal right to manufacture a product, meaning a particular business can be given that solely right to be the only supplier, while other businesses are excluded because they don't own the patent. How does the slope of the monopolist demand curve differ from that of the monopolistic? Remember, we have a monopolist, which is the monopoly, and the monopolistic. So it is very important for you to be able to give the difference in this case, either for 4 marks, 2 marks, or 8 marks. The slope for the monopoly, demand curve for the monopoly, is downward sloping like the one for the monopolistic. However, the demand curve for the monopoly is relatively inelastic because the firm is the only supplier of a unique product, meaning the product produced by this firm does not have any close or perfect substitute, so the product cannot easily be replaced. While the monopolistic business is faced by a high level of competition, meaning the demand curve there is relatively elastic, indicating that if one firm decides to increase the price, consumers will be shifting to other firms that are supplying this product that is differentiated but satisfying the same utility, because these goods produced by monopolistic business in the same industry are basically a substitute for each other. They can replace each other very, very easy. So the demand curve for the monopoly is downward sloping. However, it's relatively inelastic, indicating that consumers are less sensitive to the price change, because even if the firm changes the price, consumers do not have a choice, but they will continue by buying the product. If they don't buy the product, they go without the product. Under monopolistic, if ever the firm decide on the changing the price, maybe increasing the price or decreasing the price, there will be a huge change in quantity demanded, indicating that consumers are very sensitive. They are very sensitive to the price change. If one firm increases the price, they leave that firm and buy from other firms that are selling the differentiated product of the same nature that can easily replace, meaning they can replace each other. The slope for the monopolist demand curve is relatively elastic or steeper sloped compared to that of monopolistic competitor, where it is relatively elastic, less steep, indicating that consumers are very sensitive to the price change. And then we continue. How do monopolies become disincentive to the economy? Remember, if a business is a monopoly, sometimes we come across what we call the productive inefficiencies or technical inefficiencies. They will find it difficult to produce enough goods and services for the entire market. So some consumers will go without the product, which now is a disincentive. Remember also, if the firm is the only supplier within the entire market, that can deprive job opportunities or job creation, and also there might be lower productivity, which can compromise the GDP of the country. Monopolies are protected by barriers to entry, which limit market competition, resulting to less productivity and less supply in the market. Monopolies charge relatively high prices to keep up with their profit margins, which lower the aggregate demand for the product. Less competition caused by barriers to entry that protect monopolies restrict the output and employment opportunities. And then we continue with data response. We are given the graph here. We go straight to the market failure. We have negative externalities. Remember, we have our demand curve in here, and then the market equilibrium. We have the MPC there, and then we have MSC. So this is the marginal private cost, which is the supply curve, original supply. This is the marginal social cost, which is new supply, which is supply 1. Maybe the state intervened by charging more curb tax on environmental taxes to business that were causing more pollution in the area. So that have resulted to the firms faced by a high production cost, which result to them producing less goods within the market and selling them at the higher cost, while consumers now remain demanding more. If you can check, demand remains unchanged. So consumers are demanding more of the product, but firms decide to produce less and sell at the higher cost. So remember, shaded area indicate social cost or negative externality or and then social welfare loss. Give an example of negative externality. We talk about pollution, substance abuse, or traffic congestion. Name the shaded area A in the graph. That welfare loss, deadweight loss, external cost, or negative externality or social cost. Briefly describe the term social cost. This refers to the cost of society, which includes private costs and external costs as they are combined together. Combined cost of goods and services to producers and consumers and the society as a whole. And then we continue. Explain the lack of information to entrepreneurs. I think this one comes again. We came across it in a certain question. Lack of information on cost, availability, and productivity of factors of production will reduce its effectiveness in production. And then incomplete or inaccurate information lead to incorrect decision making about what, for whom, and how to produce. So resources are wasted or are used inefficiently. And then we continue. Still on the data response. Why is incomplete information a major concern for the market? Remember, if ever the information in the market is not totally available, all role players in the market will be making an informed decision. For instance, if ever consumers are not having adequate information, they will be wasting their resources looking for the product wherever they cannot find it. But if they were well informed about where to find the product, they will be going to the relevant market and discover the product. Also, if ever they are not informed about the price of the product, they will end up being affected by this effect of price discrimination, whereby firms will be selling the product to different consumers at different prices. So information is very important for consumers. Also for producers, it is very important for them to discover enough information about prevailing market conditions so that they will be able to make informed decisions. Also, they will be able to know where to find the better inputs at the lower cost compared to where they find inputs at the higher cost. Principal agent information occurs when one party has more information than another party in the market. This results to price discrimination. Asymmetric information has an effect of both allocative inefficiency and productive inefficiency. If we talk about asymmetric information, we refer to a situation whereby one party has more information than another party within the market. So there will be an imbalance. One is having more, one has less. Then there can be even price discrimination whereby people are charged different prices for the same product. Consumers, producers, and workers make uninformed decisions when they do not have complete market information. And then the market information comes again. So for this one, I will simply try to jump it because I believe it's more like a repeated information. So we'll check product produced by oligopolies. They are homogeneous, identical, similar, or differentiated because we have both pure oligopolies and differentiated. So the market failure occurs when there is an undersupply or oversupply of a certain product within the market, as the market misallocate resources. And then we continue and check if there's a different question in here. What is the impact of an incomplete information? Then that's a repeat also, because we have came across that particular question in there. And then we'll continue with another question and see if there's something different. How does advertising cause market failure? This one is very important. Remember, if ever goods are well advertised, we know that what you call imperfect markets use aggressive advertising to the point that they advertise their goods more regularly to make their goods appear more superior than other goods. So consumers will stop demanding, will be attracted to the product and stop demanding other goods to demand the one that appears to be more superior. And that will be affecting the entire market in that case. So aggressive advertising promotes the consumption of certain goods and services which make it more superior than others. The market uses false advertising to promote superiority of some goods, which makes those products of competitors appear inferior on the attention of consumers. So if ever some goods are well advertised, others will be neglected, so they will appear more inferior within the market. So there will be that business having to dominate the market. Remember, as for anti-monopoly, it allows business to compete freely within the market without some restrictions. And then here we are given inflation. We talk about headline inflation that I told you that is also known as the CPI inflation, which has not been adjusted for inflation. If you can check, our inflation target in South Africa is between 3 to 6%. So you see these dotted lines indicate inflation target in South Africa. And then let's check if there is any year where inflation was above the target. It was 2017. We see inflation above target, and then also here we see inflation is above the target. Is there anywhere inflation is below the target? No, inflation is within the target range or has not gone below 3%. Adapted from South African Reserve Bank quarterly bulletin. And then what do dotted lines refer to in there? It refers to inflation target of South Africa, during which year with the the Monetary Policy Committee more likely to increase the repurchase rate or repo rate. 2016, because inflation was above its target. Briefly describe the term headline inflation. That is the inflation that has not been adjusted. So the inflation rate that represents the cost of basket of goods and of an average South African household, which is measured by the CPI or Consumer Price Index, unadjusted figures. So it has not been adjusted. And then we continue. Explain the influence of inflationary expectation to consumers or consumption expenditure. We know that if ever consumers are expecting inflation to increase in the short run, they will decide, they have to make some decision. They will either buy more goods and services now so that they protect the buying power of their money in order for you to afford more goods and services, or also they can save their income or save their money for future purchases where the inflation has been lowered. So under inflationary expectations or conditions, consumers expect prices to rise further and start to buy more goods, e.g. petrol prices. We know it happens. Labor unions wish to protect their members' income against erosion of purchasing power caused by the inflation. Consumers can save their income to postpone spending for future when it can afford more goods and services, meaning after inflation has been converted. And then how would an increase in value-added tax impact in the economy? An increase in VAT could ensure increased government revenues, which will allow government to provide more social services to benefit communities or provide public goods and services, lead to decrease in government revenue due to consumers reducing their consumption. So as VAT increases, consumers afford less goods, meaning consumption might be reduced. Influence production or supply negatively due to a decrease in the demand for goods and services. Remember, if VAT increases, it increases also the selling price, resulting to consumers demanding less goods and services. Impact the lower income group more adversely due to regressive nature of taxation. So if ever the VAT increases or the tax increases, people end up affording less, which undermine their living standards. Impact negative on the level of aggregate demand due to increased prices that might lead to more unemployment within the economy. Stabilize the inflation rate due to lower demand. We know that if ever VAT increases, there will be lower demand, meaning the demand will no longer increase more than the supply, which will also stabilize prices. Here you are given the oligopoly graph. here. Remember, this is the keying demand curve. It is keying due to the fact that there is a market interdependence here. We have a top segment that is believed to be relatively elastic and the bottom segment that is believed to be relatively inelastic. This top segment is relatively elastic because consumers are very much sensitive to the increase in price if other firms are selling at the lower price within the pure oligopoly. And then the bottom one is relatively inelastic because if ever one firm decides to lower the price to gain more market share and gain more revenues, other firms might also decide to lower their prices so that they avoid losing their market share. So any expected gain or profit will be lost immediately by the firm that started to move. However, we know that under oligopoly, firms do not compete over the price because they are avoiding price war. They compete using the non-price competition strategies. So it is very important for you to be able to calculate total revenue so that you will be able to argue on the fact that why will the firm be reluctant to increase the price or lower the price from 40, either going up or going down. Remember, 40 is our collusive price. Identify the inelastic demand of the demand curve, ED1. So this one is known to be inelastic, that is ED1. The bottom segment or second segment of the keying demand curve. Name the demand curve depicted. It's a keying demand curve, which is a demand curve that is having two segments, with the first one, the top one being relatively elastic and bottom being relatively inelastic. Briefly describe the term tacit collusion. That's a collusion that occurs when there is no formal agreement between firms within the same industry, but firms can copy each other's strategies without any agreement. So it's more like it's a tacit or hidden or implicit. The behavior by firms is motivated by an arrangement that is not formal. So there's no formal agreement or arrangement. Unspoken actions between oligopolist firms that are unlikely to minimize a competitive competitive response. And then we continue. When a dominant firm increases its price and hope that its rivals will see it as a market signal and increase their prices. So if we talk of the dominant firm, remember, we are referring to the firm that is having at least more market share within the industry. Then other firms will always copy from that firm if ever the firm is making a profitable decision. So that will occur under the implicit collusion or price leadership. How does the profit of an oligopoly differ from the profit of monopolistic competitor in the long run? Remember, oligopolies will always manipulate their prices and do price fixing to keep up with their profits. Why monopolistic in the long run will enjoy normal profit because there's a high level or there's a high market entry. Market entry is completely free. Firms are free to enter the market. But under oligopoly, firms can get together through collusion, either implicitly or explicitly, by manipulating the price or exploit consumers so that they can keep up with their high profits. So they enjoy the profit in both short run and long run under the oligopoly. The oligopoly will make economic profit over a long run compared to monopolistic competitor making a normal profit only. Why will the producer be reluctant to decrease its price from 40 Rand to 28 Rand? Show all calculations. So here you have to calculate. That's why I said you must know your total revenue. The producer's revenue will decrease if the firm lower the price. At the price of 40, the producer will make 28,000, which is 40 times 700, compared to an income of 22,400 if ever the firm is decreasing the price to 28 Rand, whereby it will be 28 times 800, and then at the price of 28 Rand. At 40 Rand, the revenue would be 28,000 compared to 22,400 at the price of 28 Rand. Therefore, producer revenue will decrease. That's why the firm will be reluctant to lower its prices. Then here we are given the shutdown point. Remember, the shutdown point occurs when the firm can no longer continue with its operation or it can no longer continue to produce a particular product. If I can give you a clarity in there, shutdown does not mean that the firm is exiting the market completely. But shutdown can also mean that if the firm is producing more than one product, that will mean if firm is finding it difficult to produce a certain product, but other products are still okay, the firm can make a profit. The firm can stop producing a particular product where it does not make any much profit. Then the firm can stop on that particular product and continue with other product. Meaning it's a shutdown on stopping that operation for the particular product, but the firm continues with operations of other goods within the market. And then also shutdown can also occur when the firm then can no longer afford to produce. If ever, let's say the firm is producing one product in the market, so if the firm can no longer afford to produce because the firm is faced by AVC being more than what you call the AR, the firm then will leave the market because it's producing only one product that is not profitable enough. Then the firm will then shut down. So there are two ways. It does not always mean that the firm will exit the market, but the particular product can exit while other product the firm continues to produce them. So the shutdown occurs when the firm can no longer afford to cover its variable costs. Remember, variable costs are flexible with the output, and the firm has a control over variable costs, unlike the fixed costs that the firm does not have much control over them. So if the firm cannot afford to cover its variable costs, the firm then can leave the market or stop producing that particular product. And then it occurs under these conditions when AVC, or average variable cost, equal to the price or equal to MR or equals to AR. Remember, our MC also here can also be known as a supply curve, but then at the lowest point that is upward sloping. Identify the supply curve for the perfect competitor. What is indicated by point C, which is, this is point C, which is shut down. Briefly describe the term perfect market. Why are variable costs important on determining a firm's survival in the market? Remember, I just mentioned that for variable costs, the firm is able to control them, because as the firm produce more, they increase; produce less, they decrease. So the firm can try to work around variable costs so that it can be able to be sustained or to sustain its survival in the market. But if the firm cannot have a control over these costs, the firm will then leave the market. Why does perfect competitive firm faced by flexible equilibrium? Remember that this equilibrium can change as the market determines the price through market forces, demand and supply. The firm is the price taker. So if the price is determined at the lowest, the firm will be taking that price that is the lowest. Then if the price increases, the firm will have to take that new price, maybe, which will be shifting the equilibrium from lower to higher. Then that means equilibrium position for the perfect competitor will always be flexible compared to the one for the monopolist firm or monopoly, because the one for the monopoly remains fixed. And then these are possible answers. Identify the supply curve, that is marginal cost or MC. What is indicated by point C? That's a shutdown. And then briefly describe the term perfect market. Then that's a market structure that exists when there are many buyers and sellers with none of them having influence over the price. And then why are variable costs important for determining survival of the firm? Variable costs are important because each firm has an influence over them, unlike the fixed cost. The failure to cover variable costs for a certain product clearly indicates that it must exit the market or stop producing that particular product. And then we continue with data response. Why does perfect competitive firm faced by flexible equilibrium? Each perfect competitive firm is a price taker. It does not have any influence over the price. The price is determined by the effect of market forces, demand and supply. So the change in a market price changes the firm's equilibrium position either to higher or lower. An increase in the price pushes the firm equilibrium up, while the decrease will push the equilibrium point down. And then we have monopolistic competition here. You can see the fast food industry here. So they are competing on the differentiated products. So I won't read the extract, then we go straight to the questions. Remember, the monopolistic competitor is faced by the hybrid structure because it contains some features for both the monopoly and the perfect market. They sell differentiated products which look similar, however, they are slightly different. And these businesses cannot compete over the price, but they compete using the non-price competition strategies. And also it is faced by, like I said, hybrid structure. What is the nature of product produced by monopolistic firms? Differentiated products. What creates a uniqueness of product produced by restaurants? Product branding. And then briefly describe the term monopolistic competition or monopolistic market structure that exists where there are many buyers and sellers, and then it is having both features for the monopoly and the perfect market. Why is the monopolistic regarded as a hybrid structure? Remember, because it contains both features for the monopoly and the perfect market. And then how does the demand curve for the monopolistic differ from the monopoly? We have spoken about that before. The one for the monopoly is relatively inelastic because the firm does not have any competition, meaning consumers are not sensitive to the price change. And then we talk about the one for the monopolistic, it is downward sloping, however relatively elastic because consumers are very sensitive to price change. And then we continue. And then here we go straight to the CBA, cost benefit analysis. We are giving cost benefit analysis for water resource development. So in this case, we have dam site number 1, 2, and 3, and then we have present value of benefits, and then we have present value of cost, and then we have net benefits, and then we have cost benefit ratio, which is known as CBR. So under CBA, we compare both social benefits and social costs, remember. So we go to the point of calculating the cost benefit ratio, whereby we check if the project will be economically worthwhile or not, whether the project will be beneficial in the economy or not. Remember, if ever the CBR or cost benefit ratio is more than 1, that means the project is economically worthwhile, because social benefits are more than social cost. If the CBR equals to 1, that means social costs are equal to social benefit, then the project cannot continue because it is not economically worthwhile. That means then in that case, the CBA can also be conducted at the later stage. And then if the CBR is less than 1, that means the project is not economically worthwhile, because social costs are more than social benefits of the project. And then let's check questions in there. It is very important that you are able to calculate here. Identify the net present value. Remember also, whenever they do what we call the CPA, they consider the net present value and the net future value. If we talk about the net present value, we talk about the current inflation rate, the current interest rate, and current exchange rate that are inflated. And then if we talk about the net future, that's where now they use projections. If ever the project will be taking about 25 years from now, they will be projecting that after 25 years, how much will be the value of interest rate? If they need input from abroad, how much will be our rent against that particular currency where they buy what we call capital goods? So they consider that, and also inflation rate. So the net present value is what we call 1.5 million. And then what decision can be taken if cost benefit ratio is less than 1? The project cannot continue because it's not economically worthwhile, meaning social costs are more than social benefits. Briefly describe the term cost benefit analysis. Cost benefit analysis is the process of comparing both social benefits and social costs for the particular project. How are long-term projects evaluated considering the future effect? Like I've mentioned before, the net future value is used, which considers future interest rate, inflation, and the future exchange rate, if ever they consider the net future value. Calculate the cost benefit ratio, CPR. Analysis for dam site 3. Show all calculations. Remember, if you calculate CPR, we simply say CPR equals to social benefit divided by the social cost. Then let's look, CPR equal to social benefit divided by social cost, and then we substitute 3,350,000 divided by 2,200,000, and then we get 1.5. Our CPR is 1.5, meaning it's more than 1. That simply means the project can continue because it's economically worthwhile, because social benefits are greater than social cost. And then another sample of data response, environmental sustainability. So let's see here, we have environmental problems, and then hazardous waste. Remember, this is a very much dangerous waste that can be exposed to the environment, that can take time to decompose. Chemical waste, the waste of chemicals into running water or sea, that can kill animals, plants that depend on it for irrigation, as well as people that are drinking that water. So let's check questions. That is under environmental sustainability. Identify one environmental problem in the cartoon. Hazardous waste, it can also be the chemical waste. Identify the phrase from the cartoon that relates to loss of biodiversity. You have killed the plant and animal life, so that's a loss of biodiversity, because if we talk of biodiversity, we talk about living things and non-living things that we interact with within the environment. Briefly describe the term pollution, the introduction of toxic substances into the environment, and then we continue. Explain a measure adopted by international community to deal with the loss of biodiversity. Cite bans commercial international trade in endangered species or plant and animals. And then, why is hazardous waste and chemical waste regarded as harmful into the environment? They kill living organisms, therefore causing an imbalance in the ecosystem. And then they cause infertility in people, animals, and plants, if ever they occur. Then also we have a data response here that talks about the rand benefiting South Africa's tourism. So remember, in this case, if our rand appreciates, we will be able to tour abroad. But if our rand depreciates, it will be expensive for us to tour abroad. However, foreign tourists can find it very much easier to tour into South Africa because our rent is relatively affordable. So that will be increasing foreign tourists coming into South Africa. So it will be increasing our economic activities. So let's check if we can go through what can we underline here within our data response, looking at the time. So it says South Africa's currency has reached the lowest level since 2001. This is a great news for international tourists who can take advantage of a favorable exchange rate to visit South Africa. Now, more than ever, South Africa offers great value of money and has become one of the greatest holiday destinations for international travelers. South Africa offers vacations options to suit every pocket and taste. Travelers are truly spoiled for choices from hotel, safari lodge, accommodation, restaurants offering local and international cuisine, access to a Big Five wildlife, and spectacular, breathtaking scenery. Let's look at questions here. Identify one good or service on which tourists can spend money in South Africa in the extract: hotel and lodge accommodation, restaurant services, Big Five viewing. What is the name of South African currency? So obviously it's the rand. And then briefly describe the term ecotourism. So this ecotourism occurs when tourists visit the place to observe the beauty of nature. That is known as an ecotourism. And then we continue. How does weaker rand affect South African tourists? So outbound tourism will be more expensive, meaning our tourists will find it very expensive to tour to foreign countries, meaning it will be declining because our weak rand result to foreign currencies being very much expensive. Weak South African currency is detrimental to outbound tourism. This will therefore increase domestic tourism because they will end up touring within the country only. How can an increase in tourism negatively affect environment? We know that if ever there's a high level of tourism in a particular area, that can lead to environmental degradation and environmental stress because large number of people will visit the area at the same time. It will be causing also even congestion and also the burning of fossil fuels as more cars are moving into the same destination at the same time. And then increase in tourists to one place, increase environmental stress, and then tourism activities have negative effect on the environment if tourists leave their carbon footprint. Increase in tourism result to high prices for local. We know that local people will end up paying more to afford goods and services because producers or people, those businesses in the market will be inflating their prices to get more profit because the area is a tourism attraction. And then here we have inflation, what we call data response, fuel hike to seep into consumer inflation. So this is all about an increase in fuel hike causing the cost push inflation within the economy, affecting people not to afford more goods and services. Remember, if inflation increases, it decreases the buying power of money, resulting to people being trapped in poverty because they will be affording less goods and services. Then let's look at questions on this one. Identify the type of inflation associated with the increase in fuel prices on the above extract that will be cost push inflation or supply inflation. And then name one way in which inflation is measured. So like we have mentioned before, indexes, which is CPI or PPI, weighting, and then inflation rate. And then we have a GDP deflator. Briefly describe the term core inflation. Remember, that's inflation that has been adjusted, whereby goods with highly volatile prices have been removed. The core inflation excludes items from the CPI basket that have highly volatile prices and items with prices that are affected by the government intervention or policy. And then we continue with this data response. Why should the wage rate be determined at the same or higher rate than the average consumer price index? Remember, it is very important for workers to enjoy high living standards. So if ever inflation increases higher than the wage rate, the living standards will be undermined. So workers will find themselves having undermined or lower standard of living. So it is very important for their wages to be adjusted equal or above the inflation rate for them to have benefits or to enjoy high living standards. Workers must enjoy better or same standard of living. Workers should be able to afford basic goods. They should have enough money to satisfy their basic needs and wants. Questions the effect of inflation, which could reduce disposable income. The real wage increase to keep track with the cost of living increases. And then how can the government use fiscal policy to combat inflation? So for the government to combat inflation, it can simply apply what we call a restrictionary fiscal policy, which occurs when the state intervenes by increasing taxes and decreasing government spending. That can lead to relatively less disposable income in the economy and less demand for goods and services. So increase in direct taxes to decrease the disposable income of consumers, and then increase in indirect taxes to reduce the credit, to reduce credit expenditure. Reduction of government expenditure such as postponement or even cancelling expensive infrastructure projects so that there will be less income available within the economy, then there will be less demand. Reduce government debts used to finance government spending. Reduce government spending on wages and salaries, annual increase so that workers will remain with less income, but then I don't encourage that. And then we continue. Now we have the Migli order whereby you need to explain, as you answer the question, briefly explain the reasons for cost-benefit analysis. So let's see, a cost-benefit analysis is used in public sector projects as there are no market signals to guide decision-making, e.g. roads and bridges if they are being made. To identify the relevant benefits and costs of a project before an informed decision can be made. To ensure economic efficiency in resource allocation. To include a wider social impact and exclude externalities in the decision-making process to estimate the effect of environment on social welfare and environment. To bring greater objectivity to decision making to avoid subjectivity. And then for this one, you are given information on the CPI for 2020 Consumer Price Index and the one for 2021. And then obviously you must calculate inflation rate. Study the above table and calculate inflation rate. Advise the governor of South African Reserve Bank on how Monetary Policy Committee can use repo rate based on prevailing inflation conditions. So remember, if ever inflation that we discover here is above 7%, it's above 6%, the governor with MPC must intervene by combating that inflation using the interest rate, which basically they will be increasing repurchase rates so that credit will be more expensive in the economy or by financial institutions, resulting to less demand supply and less demand for goods and services. Inflation rate, we say CPI for 2021 minus CPI for 2020 divided by CPI for 2020 times 100. Then we substitute 160 minus 154 divided by 154 multiplied by 100. Then we get 7,79. That simply means now our inflation is almost 8%. So this is bad. Reserve Bank must intervene by combating this inflation, meaning the Reserve Bank should ensure that inflation is within the target range of 3 to 6%. So the governor of South African Reserve Bank with MPC must intervene by increasing repo rate to decrease the money supply. High repo rate result to credit becoming more expensive. This decreases credit availability. Less borrowing result to less money supply, which result to decrease in aggregate demand in the economy. Less demand relief pressure on supply and push prices down. And then we continue with we have the higher order. Analyze the behavior of different role players in the economy during the high inflation expectations. So if ever role players or participants expect inflation to increase, obviously we spoke about this one, consumers will spend more now, will demand more goods and services while their money can still afford more goods and services to protect the buying power, or consumers will decide to save their income for future purchases, so when the inflation will be lower so that they can afford more goods and services. Trade unions will start negotiating better salaries for their members so that living standard is not undermined, and then businesses will decide to produce more goods and services now or buy more capital goods now so that they will be able to produce even effective during high inflation rate, or they will be increasing their selling prices right now so that they are able to benefit because they are fully aware that if ever inflation increases in the near future, they will be affording less. Consumers will be affording relatively less goods and services, so there will be lower demand for goods and services. So if they are increasing their prices now, they are simply fueling what we call the inflation even further. Also, the government can intervene by using some measures such as fiscal and monetary policy to combat inflation or to keep inflation within its target range. High inflation expectation affect decision making by all economic role players as they try to protect buying power parity of their money. Consumers or households immediately increase their spending while their income can still afford more goods and services. They can also postpone spending by saving their income for future purchases when their money can afford more goods and services. Producers produce more goods and services now while input costs are still cheap. They also increase selling prices to keep up with their high profits as they compensate themselves with the future loss during high level of inflation. This can fuel inflation rate even further. And then we continue. Trade unions start negotiating wages and salaries for their members so that they enjoy high living standard. This may lead to industrial instabilities if wages negotiations do not bring mutual benefit or mutual agreement between businesses and workers. And then the government, through Reserve Bank, intervenes by increasing repurchase rate to reduce money supply and curb the spending in the economy. And then differentiate between conservation and preservation. And then here, remember, it is very important if you distinguish. It's 8 marks. You give, you answer in full sentences, ensure that it's 4 marks as you respond. Conservation deals with the sustainable use of and management of natural resources to ensure they are available even for future generation. And then conservation aims to create a continuity of the environment while ensuring that changes is sympathetic to the quality of life. They must remain intact even for future generation. They must not be degraded. Human activities affect the environment not only because they cause pollution, but also because they tend to overutilize them. So they extract resources which can lead to them being depleted. So they must be conserved. And then we continue with the same question. Preservation. Preservation concerns elements of the environment that are threatened to extinction that can be completed if they are overused. Preservation aims to protect and maintain these elements in their present value, even so they remain intact even for future generation. The weakness in the market solution require government to intervene to preserve environment assets through buying or expropriation, subsidizing and control. Help to preserve biodiversity so that they remain available even for future generation. Here you are given the graph. You were told to draw the graph. Use the graph of the total cost and total revenue, explain the profit maximization. So the graph is drawn here. We have the quantity and the total, the cost and revenues on our vertical axis. And then remember, there is a point A and point B that indicate that total revenues are equal to the total cost in there. And then what you call the profit is maximized whenever TC furthers away from what you call the total revenues. Be able to draw this graph in case it is there. The firm will make a profit between point A and point B, total revenue and total cost, where the total revenue exceeds total cost. And then profit is maximized when the gap between TR and TC is the greatest or furthest away. This occurs at 4 units of production, which is here, and then at the price of 40, which is this one. Then that's why we say it's a profit maximization. Break-even point is on point A and point B. So point A and point B, that's whereby total revenues are equal to the total cost in the business. Critically discuss the challenges countries face in reducing the production of hazardous waste. We know that hazardous waste is that waste that is very much toxic and dangerous into the environment. That is the waste that will take time to decompose. So it is whenever it's wasted, it will last for the long period of time. That's why some of those materials should be recycled. We know that developing countries sometimes they allow those Western countries to bring that waste into Africa, so that it can be wasted, and they are getting paid for that. Producing goods in modern economies which automatically lead to chemical waste as byproduct. This will mean that hazardous waste could only be reduced if production decrease, which would contribute to more unemployment. So we can only reduce this kind of the pollution if we decrease production. However, that also have a bad effect because it will lead to increased unemployment. Exporting hazardous waste to developing countries at a price. This gives them an opportunity to get rid of excess waste, because many African countries like the Ivory Coast allow this activity as its source, as it's a source of income for them. They receive that waste and they are getting paid for that. And then we continue with the same question. Increasing economic activities such as manufacturing and agricultural production that exceed the measures used by the government to restrict or dispose of hazardous waste. Generating hazardous waste is also found in households, although on a much smaller scale, such as leftover paints. And then we continue. A big challenge remains to change the mindset of people by educating households to reduce the usage of products that is regarded as hazardous waste, like e-waste, where computers are sold in developing countries that should have been hazardous waste in the country of origin. And then let's check another question. How can the monetary policy measures be used to to combat inflation or to make the inflation as the problem of the past. So if we are making inflation as the problem of the past, meaning we are getting rid of inflation or we are combating inflation. Remember, monetary policy instruments, we talk about repo rate, we talk about open market transaction, we talk about cash reserve requirement, and then we talk about moral persuasion or moral suasion. So in this case, the Reserve Bank can intervene by increasing repo rate to decrease the money supply, which can lead to decrease in demand for goods and services, because as interest rate increases, borrowing money become more expensive, which decreases money supply, and consumers will demand relatively less goods and services. Cash reserves can be increased so that there will be more vault money that can be available but not available to be given as loans by commercial banks. That will lead to less money supply and less demand for goods and services. And then also in continuity, open market transaction, that's when the Reserve Bank can intervene by doing what? By selling bonds to commercial banks. As they sell bonds, they are collecting money from the circulation, resulting to commercial banks remaining with less money, which will decrease the demand for goods and services because there will be less money giving out as loans. And then also, moral persuasion or moral suasion or credit control. Commercial banks can be instructed by Reserve Bank to be very much strict when giving out credit so that there will be less demand for goods and services. Then let's check differentiate between chemical waste and hazardous waste. Let's see the chemical waste, the exposure to chemicals such as insecticides and pesticides can result in immediate death of living and non-living things. In other instances, it can result to death after a period of time due to digestive incapacity or nerve malfunctioning. And then in human beings, plants and animals, exposure to toxicity may result in infertility. In normal concentration, most chemicals are not toxic, but in excess amount, they all can be dangerous, e.g. incorrect medicine dosage. And then we continue chemical waste. The production of chemicals result to chemical waste, and disposing of such chemicals is always a problem in the environment. And then the Stockholm Protocol prohibit 12 of the deadliest man-made chemicals. Then the Rotterdam Convention protects countries which do not have the necessary infrastructure to monitor the trade of hazardous chemicals. And then we continue hazardous waste. The type of waste are dangerous into living organism and the ecosystem as a whole, and because they are very slow to decompose, such as the cardboards, bottles, and plastic. It includes the disposal of toxic material into the environment, such as bottles, plastic, and cardboards. Recycling of used material is one of the trusted systems to reduce hazardous waste within the environment. The Basel Convention allows parties to export hazardous waste that has not banned its import. Evaluate the success of Commission Policy Act of South Africa. This is one of those questions. If we are checking if the Commission Policy Act of South Africa has been successful or not since it was formed in 1998. So success factors include provide consumers with competitive prices and variety of products, e.g. MTN and Vodacom. And then DSTV has been found guilty of price fixing and fined 180 million by the Commission. And then also Tiger Brands was fined 8 million for collusion in the mailing industry. South African banks face market fines for pricing, fixing, and collusion. Then we continue with the success, I believe, on the next slide. Fruit and vegetable producer fined for price fixing and collusion, and then encourage South Africans to participate in the world market and accept foreign competition. Enables SMMEs to participate in the economy. Enables previous disadvantaged groups to increase their ownership in the business sector. And then we continue with the same question. Various anti-competitive practices have been investigated with positive outcome. Currently, a number of big insurance companies in South Africa are under investigation over being alleged of fixing premiums. And then we look at the failure now. And then fines imposed on firms that have been found guilty are too lenient or have been too lenient, allowing them to continue. It has failed to protect consumers over aggressive prices. Prices have been detrimental to economic growth and development over the past 2 years. State ownership of monopolies remain as the main suppliers of some products, such as electricity, which has contributed to high level of productive and allocative inefficiency. We talk about Eskom in there, since it's a state monopoly, so it has remained, and also it has caused consistently productive and allocative inefficiencies resulting to failure of South African economy. And then how can the market be a solution to reduction of greenhouse gases? We know that the market will always see environment as a common resource to create wealth. So the market can use both renewable and non-renewable resources in a sustainable manner, not over extracting them. It can invest on eco-friendly machines that are less harmful into the environment. And then business can reuse the materials such as cardboard, plastics, as well as bottles and chemicals instead of wasting them to protect the environment. The burning of fossil fuel can be reduced in the automotive market by investing on electronic vehicles instead of the ones that are burning fossil fuels. And then this is section C. So these are the essays that are possible. We have question 5 here for microeconomics. So we'll simply do one example, discussing detail various equilibrium positions with the aid of graphs. Remember, if in this case we are referring to the perfect market, discussing detail various equilibrium position for the firm under perfect market using graphs. That's when now you introduce the essay by defining the perfect market, and then you explain you tell us maybe normal profit, and then you explain the condition for the normal profit to say normal profit occurs when the firm total revenues are equal to the firm's total cost that incur in the business. The average revenues will be equal to the average cost, meaning average cost curve will always tend along the average revenue curve. These are minimum earnings that prevent the firm from leaving the market. It is also known as the break even because the firm is breaking even in there. Then you draw the graph, you explain your graph or you interpret your graph. You go to the economic profit. You tell us economic profit is economic condition that occurs when the firm's total revenues exceed total cost. Or you can say it occurs when the firm's average revenues are greater than the firm's average cost or cost that incur in the business. And then you tell us that for the firm to have economic profit, that means that the average cost for the firm should be below the average revenues, or total cost should be below total revenue. So meaning average cost curve must tend beneath average revenues. You draw your graph, you interpret your graph, you go to economic laws, you explain economic laws is the economic condition that the market condition that prevail when the firm's average costs are greater than the firm's average revenues, or the firm total cost is more than the firm's total revenues. So remember, the AC must in that case must turn above the average revenue, so it must be greater than average revenues. After that, you can then draw your graph and explain the condition. Then you go to additional part. Discuss the monopoly in detail with or without graphs. So in this case, we are discussing characteristics. It can also be when you discuss equilibrium position. So there are two ways here. Remember, it is very important that you know your characteristics, all of them, and be able to discuss them in detail. Or also the market structure for the monopoly can be required in there. So where you say there is one seller, be able to answer the question why there is one seller. Be able to tell us there is one seller because there is no competition. It is limited. Only one seller participate in the market to produce a product for the entire market. The market end is completely blocked. Then you continue by telling us the firm produces a unique product. You explain the meaning of unique product to say they are unique or they are heterogeneous, meaning they are not similar to any other product in the market. They cannot be replaced because they don't contain any perfect or close substitutes. It is very important for you to be able to do that as you explain your characteristics. Also, if they say with the aid of graphs, that simply means you introduce by defining the monopoly, and then you explain the economic profit that is enjoyed by the firm in the short run. You explain, like I've said, I've done under perfect market. You draw the graph, you interpret the graph, and then you go further to the economic laws that occurs in there. You explain the condition, and also you also draw the graph, you interpret the graph. So there are three ways actually: characteristics, the market structure, as well as drawing graphs and explain them. And also explaining the condition. Explain oligopoly in detail. So in this case, we look for the market interdependent. It can also be the market structure, by the way. So in this case, it's very important for you to know characteristics or the behavior of oligopolist. So you must be able to discuss that behavior in terms of characteristics in details. For instance, if you say there are few large firms and many buyers, be able to explain that. And then if you say there are barriers to entry are there, be able to explain those barriers to entry that can exist under oligopoly to block the entry of some businesses, to not to allow all businesses to enter the market. And then also be able to explain what we call the market interdependent, to say that firms are very much dependent to one another. Decision by one firm will always affect decision to be made by other firms. And then compare and contrast any two types of market structure. So it can either be perfect market and monopoly. Remember, if you do the market structure, you don't immediately give the characteristic. You will be saying number of buyers and sellers. Then you underline, that's a mark alone if it's not given in the question statement. After that, you explain to say under maybe perfect market, there are many buyers and sellers. That simply means there's a high level of competition under the perfect market, due to the fact that the market entry is completely free to new entrants to enter the market. And then under monopoly, you tell us there is one seller and many buyers. That is caused by the fact that there is no competition. The entry in the market is completely blocked. Be able to compare and contrast if you are given such a question. And then discuss in detail how the following factors or reasons can lead to the misallocation of resources or market failure. In that case, I'm talking about reasons for market failures. That's when we talk about missing markets. So we say market is completely incomplete without the provision of some public goods and services, and then you discuss those public goods, which can be community goods and allocative goods. You give their characteristics and also explain them, and then you go further to merit and demerit goods. You explain. So you go to the lack of information, imperfect market structure, unfair distribution of income, and just continue in there. Be able to provide information in details. Discuss in detail state intervention as a consequence of market failures. So it can either be using the graph or without using graphs. So it is very important for you to be able to draw graphs in the under state intervention. I think we have about 5 graphs that can be drawn in there. Also, it is very important for you to discuss without graphs, where you discuss the likes of minimum wages, taxation, subsidies. Also, we also talk about minimum price, maximum prices. Be able to draw those graphs and also be able to explain the effect in those graphs so that you can get marks in case this question comes in. Economic issues, question number 6. So if you want to take this question, it says discuss in detail consequences of market failures. So it is very important for you to know those consequences to debtors, taxpayers, industrial stability, psychological effect, etc. Be able to discuss that in detail. Discuss in detail measures to combat inflation. So it is very important for you to know those monetary measures, fiscal measures, and other measures. And then examine in detail effects of tourism. It is also important for you to know that is safe for the effects of tourism, including the one for benefits of tourism. Discuss in detail government intervention to ensure sustainable development. That is environmental sustainability, where the government intervenes by issuing what you call marketable permits, and also giving property rights, introducing environmental taxes, giving production giving environmental subsidies through voluntary agreements, and also through what we call education. Remember that in detail we have that example of an essay here. Discuss in detail the following problems and the intentional measures taken to ensure sustainable development. You talk about loss of biodiversity. We talk about the chemical waste, hazardous waste. We talk about climate change, and then we talk about biodiversity loss, chemical waste, hazardous waste, the climate change, then etc. Let's go on then and see the example of an essay. I will simply browse on this one. This is the market structure that you must note in your mind in case you are given a chance to compare and contrast market structures within the economy or within the market. So that's when now we talk about characteristics this side, and then we answer here. Perfect market, the many sellers, homogeneous products, etc. So keep this in your mind. Be able to draw the structure so that if ever they say compare and contrast, we are able to compare and contrast those markets that will be given to you to compare and contrast. So this is the example of an essay. Discuss in detail without drawing graphs state intervention as a consequence of market failure. And then how can the market inefficiency be reduced by the global markets, meaning globalization? 10 marks. So let's see. I will simply be fast on this one because of time. We define market failure occurs. The market failure occurs consequences such as inefficiencies, spillover effects, imperfect competition, and government intervention are likely to prevail. Then any other response can be accepted. If ever defined market failure, it will also be a mark for you. And then we continue with the body. We have a direct control. That's when the state intervenes by setting some laws and bylaws within the market. The state can pass laws or use the existing legislative framework to control businesses and industries, individuals who generate negative externalities. In South Africa, emissions are potentially dangerous chemicals. and scenic pollution, environmental preservation and control through what you call Carriers Act regulations. Advertising by the tobacco industry is prohibited, and alcohol may not be sold to on Sundays or to persons under the age of 18. Those are laws that have been set by the government. Also, whenever they advertise these demerit goods, they need to give the negative effect of those goods within their adverts, so that they create that awareness. Also, you normally see that if they advertise alcohol, they say do not drink and drive, not for sale to people under the age of 18. Those things, those are the regulations that have been set by the government. Also, the government ensure that it forces businesses to provide enough information on their packaging and also online about their operations, so that consumers will be having enough information about the operations for businesses. Imperfect markets. Formulating or implementing competition policy increases the level of competition. Using laws on competition prevent exorbitant prices charged by firms to ensure that entry to the market is free. Prevent harmful collusion and encourage foreign competition, which helps to keep prices low. Granting licenses to more businesses in the case of state monopolies. Imposing price control to decrease prices on goods and services that are very much important for social welfare. Levying of taxes. The government will intervene in the market by levying taxes to recover external cost. These are green or capped taxes. These taxes will increase the price and will result to the decrease in production of certain goods. Levying taxes could be used as strategy of reducing production and consumption of demerit goods, as well as generating revenue for the state. Firms and consumers will then be allocating resources in more efficient way. And then providing providing producer subsidies. The government provides subsidies to producers to encourage them to produce more goods and services. Subsidies increase supply of specific goods and services such as milk, wheat, and maize. Subsidies lower the cost of producing goods, and thus the market price for these goods will also be lowered, increasing the consumption for consumers. Minimum wage. Minimum wage is the lowest remuneration that employers are required to pay their workers. Income for the workers will increase, and as a result, standard of living will also be improved. A minimum wage is set above the equilibrium market wage. Supply labor will exceed the demand for supply for labor will exceed the demand for labor, because labor force will be buzzing up, and then firms will find it expensive to employ workers. Then they will retrench some workers. This increase the cost of labor, resulting to high cost of production by businesses. Some workers may be retrenched and increase unemployment while production decreases. Minimum wage will lead to more bargaining power of workers. Minimum prices. The government is obliged to intervene to ensure sufficient supplies for staple food in the market to ensure food security. The approach of setting minimum price or price floor, which be used so that it will be worthwhile for producers to make comfortable profit to produce essential goods in desired quantities. These are prices that are set above the market price by the government. They are normally set on the agricultural markets, especially for maize meal. It is sold at the minimum price. Minimum price, however, has unwanted side effect as they cause surplus in the market, resulting to goods being sold in foreign countries at the lowest possible cost, which is known as dumping. As we know that World Trade Organization is against the dumping. Maximum prices. The government will set the maximum price if the price is deemed to be too high for essential goods or basic goods. So maximum price that is set by the government below the market price, it is known as the price ceiling or maximum price. The government will intervene in the market by passing law that suppliers may not charge more than that particular set price. The immediate effect of the maximum price in the market will be goods being undersupplied, because firms will be demotivated to produce more due to the lower price. Shortages in the market supply will occur, then that will need the government to intervene by supplying those goods and services. Redistribution of income and wealth. The South African government uses progressive tax system to distribute income and wealth even fairly. That's when we talk about more income. I mean, more income earners are being taxed more and lower income earners are being taxed less. Traditional methods such as levying various taxes, provisioning of free services, benefits in kind, and cash benefits are used to reduce the income gap or income inequalities. The government can also implement redress methods such as triple BE, affirmative action, land restitution and land redistribution, and property subsidies on redistribute wealth amongst the population. Government involvement in production, subsidies, subsidizing merit goods to increase production, imposing tax on demerit goods to reduce production, levying income taxes, indirect taxes, and wealth taxes to provide community goods free of charge, providing collective goods such as refuse removal, waste disposal, sewage drainage for user fee. That worth about 26 marks. And then there is also additional part: how can the market inefficiency be reduced by global markets, allowing foreign direct investment in the economy to increase supply of goods and services, increasing competition in local market, and reducing the existence of monopolies, increasing accessibility of information to both consumers and producers for them to make rational or informed decisions. And then ensuring efficient allocation of resources by allowing countries to specialize in production of goods and serve they have competitive advantage on, increasing mobility of factors of production between different countries, encouraging businesses to be innovative and produce goods and services of a better quality for consumers, increasing consumer choice on goods and services. And then we have conclusion. Market failure may also result in inefficiencies in the way that resources are allocated and used in producing goods and services. Maximum of 2 marks. Any conclusion for higher order can be accepted. Then let's look at another example. Discuss government's attempt to intervention and control to ensure the sustainability of the environment. So I spoke about this before. How effective is pollution control in South Africa? I will be quick also on this one. Introduction, we define environmental sustainability, and then we define environmental sustainability or environment itself, and then we talk to levying of environmental taxes. We know that the state intervened by levying environmental taxes so that it will reduce the environmental damage or the pollution that is caused by businesses within the environment. And then it continues here, and then we have paying for the use of the environment. So that simply means monthly fees can be a part of municipal account is charged in collection of waste, sewage, and garbage. Household already pay for the collection of rubbish, and then the factory owner might clean up his waste if it costs him to dump it. Industries might also pay for emitting gases that can be harmful to people and the environment. Pay for the, also environmental subsidies, which are given to those businesses that are willing to use what we call the technology that is not harmful into the environment, like using we talk about the use of and those that are not causing some emissions or gases in the environment. And then subsidies are awarded to businesses that are willing to reduce pollution. Waste can also be reduced by using new techniques or equipment such as solar energy. So those businesses are given environmental subsidies. Granting property rights. In this case, it is believed that people are always willing to take off what belongs to them. So people are given property rights so that they can also protect the environment. That they can protect the areas that they are occupying. Then that will be reducing environmental damage. If ever they are failing to sustain or protect that environment, then they can be charged by the government. Normally, owners of properties tend to be more proactive over their resource than users who are only interested on profits. For this reason, the government might grant property rights over specific area. Property rights empowers owners to negotiate contracts with businesses who wish to exploit areas' resources. And then we also have marketable permits that are given by the government. So businesses have right to buy marketable permits. They are issued by what we call Department of Trade, Industry and Minerals. So each business can buy marketable permits that can be equal to their pollution size. But however, business can buy more and sell to other businesses as they cause pollution. Education, incorporating topics into the curriculum of school fosters awareness to ensure that pupils are made aware of environmental importance and the damage that is caused by neglecting taking care of the environment. And then public sector control, if the government intervention does not attain a desired result, then it has to intervene more direct by setting and enforcing limits. And then we have environmental impact assessments. South African projected construction, mining, or similar development has to undergo assessment by qualified environmental professionals to prove that it will not cause unwarranted environmental damage and that the damage can be repaired after construction. The cost is built into the project. And then we have voluntary agreement. That's when now businesses agree to volunteer to take care of the environment. Agreements between governments and businesses voluntarily to address negative environment impacts. Business voluntarily agree to decrease emissions of pollutants. Most prefer negotiation so that they can tailor their specific needs and include into the planning. Agreements can be formal or legally binding agreements. And then we have what we call the command and control policies, where that will occur in 3 ways. The command and control policies, that's when we measure the quality of pollution, the effect of the pollution, and then the quantity, the size of the pollution caused by the business, and then the social effect, how much is that pollution affecting the society. How effective are pollution control measures in South Africa? The government is consistent on refuse removal, especially in urban areas. Curriculum is used to create awareness of the importance of protecting environment. City parks, nature reserves, and game reserves operate through principles that promote environmental sustainability. And then government does not exercise effective control over the continuous dumping of waste because of lack of coordination between departments. The fines imposed on industries that dump waste are too lenient and they continue polluting the environment. The minimum standards set for hazardous gas and the fuels emissions are not enforced or adjusted. And then we continue. The recycling of waste material is not widely encouraged and promoted, and landfill sites are overflowing. Government has various laws that are not easily effectively implemented. Poor service delivery also add to the problem in certain areas. And then that's your conclusion. Any higher order conclusion can be accepted in this case. And then we have some graphs that we're willing to show you here. And then the economic loss graphs. So I will be quick here for the perfect market. It is very important that we are able to draw these graphs. So there is your graph in the average cost, marginal cost, that's economic loss E, which is, then we have our AC there. And then we continue with the next graph, economic profit graph. So we have our output and quantity, our demand curve, and then we have the cost there joining our output, and then marginal cost, and then 100 as revenues. Marginal cost is labeled equilibrium point there, profit maximization. And then we have our AC that is drawn in there, and then the firm is making economic profit because AR is more than AC. And then normal profit also comes up there, where our revenues are equal to our cost. And then labeling on axis, of axis, and then AR, MR, and D. And then we have our 100 as a quantity, and then our MC comes up, our revenues are equal to 90, marginal cost, that is a point profit maximization, and then our our AC comes in there, and then that's AC, so that's a normal profit graph. And then we have entry and exit of firms here. So if ever firms are entering the market, it is very important for you to be able to draw this graph or explain without the graph that if ever new firms are entering the market, there will be more market supply, meaning supply will be shifting from S to S1, resulting to the decrease in price. So the firm will be taking, originally will be selling at 50 Rand, which will be the quantity at Q. And then if ever firms are entering the market supply will decline, will increase, declining the price. So we see it is increasing from Q to Q1, resulting now to what? It is resulting to the fact, resulting to the firm having to supply less. If you can check, our original demand curve is here, which is our what we call Q, then the AR is to D. So in that case, the price is 90 Rand. And then if ever there is more entry in the market, that leads to the firm having to supply less goods and services because of the increased competition, resulting to the decrease in quantity and the firm making a normal profit. And then exit of firms. If ever firms are leaving the market, that result to exiting firms having to make even more profit in the market because the market supply, as the market supply decrease, remaining firms have to produce much of the goods and services within the market because there's even less competition. So market supply has declined because firms has left the market, resulting to the increase in price. So the firm was selling at 90 Rand and now it's selling at 150 because of the the decrease in the decrease in market supply. The price is high now. The firm is the price taker. remember. So we move from MR is to D, so we go to AR1, MR1 equals to D1. So that leads to the firm enjoying more profit because now it has to produce more goods and services than before. The quantity was Q, now is Q1. The market was supplying more goods at Q, but now it's supplying less goods at Q1. It is very important for you to be able to draw these graphs and explain them. And then let's see. Then we have this one, the MR and MC profit maximization. It is very important for you to be able to draw this graph again, where we use MR and MC. So let me be quick on showing you this graph. So we have points here on the price, our marginal cost, and the quantity. These are our revenues at 40 Rand. And then be aware that any point below the red point here indicate economic profit. Any point above this point indicate what we call economic loss. But then this point indicate that MC equals to MR. So let's see, that's point E. And then we call this MR equal to MC, which is the profit maximization. And then we continue by connecting our points in there. And then that is 6 is to 60. And then the last point in there, that is our marginal cost. So this is indicated as the profit because AR is more than AC in this case. You can see revenues are 40 and then costs are below 40. So that's a profit. But any point above there indicates economic loss. You can see as I'm indicating there, it's a loss because AR is less than AC or AC is more than AR. Any point above the red point here indicate economic loss because MC is greater than what we call the MR. And then this is another graph where you maximize profit using total revenue and total cost. We have seen this graph before. There's our total revenue. This is our total cost. And then there we have the first point in there and the second point where they are both equal, TR and TC. Meaning that's a break even, a point or normal profit because they're both equal. And then profit is maximized at that point where what we call the MC feathers away from TR. This is the shutdown point, or you must know, you must be able to draw this graph. Also, if they say draw the supply curve, it is very important for you to be able to draw the supply curve under the perfect market. Remember, it is at the lowest point that is upward sloping where the production begins for the firm, where AV is equal to the price. And then we have this graph also that indicates total revenue maximization. You can see we have the first graph on top there and the second one at the bottom. And then total revenue will increase until it reaches maximum limit. After that, it will be decreasing, meaning it's being maximized. It will be sloping down until it becomes 0. It is maximized at P and Q, because in that case, the total revenue can no longer increase. So that is indicated along the demand curve, those points. And then you can see the point of of P indicated there and the Q, and then P1 and Q1 they are indicated. And then we have the economic loss for the firm under what we call the monopoly. You can see that our revenues are less and then the costs are higher than that economic loss for the firm. And then there it is being explained. And then we have our economic profit, whereby our revenues are more, our costs are lower there than that economic loss. It is very important for you to be able to explain those conditions. And then as we continue, we have the normal profit where revenues are equal to the cost of doing the business. And then other graph that you can come across, negative externalities that occur in the business. This is the graph that is indicated. We have seen this graph before, whereby there is a shift of the supply, maybe because the government have intervened by increasing the tax on what you call on pollution, resulting to the firms faced by high production costs and reducing the supply by those businesses, while consumers are demanding more products, but firms are supplying less at the higher cost. That's a negative externality. That's why we say it's an external cost or social cost. And then another graph that indicates the positive externality. That's whereby maybe there is a certain project of improving skills in the area, allowing people to be more marketable and employable. They then get to be employed, then they demand more goods and services. We find them demanding more goods and services while the market is willing to supply relatively less. We see supply remains constant while while consumers are demanding relatively more, so the demand is more than the supply. So that is the benefit to the society. That's why we call this social benefit or external benefits. Remember, we call this marginal private benefit and marginal social benefit. The new demand curve. Original is marginal private benefit. And then it is very important for you to know this one also, the PPC. Remember, any point inside the PPC indicate allocative inefficiency and productive inefficiency. Any point along this point where it touches, where indifferent curve touches the PPC indicate allocative efficiently and productive efficiency. Outside there is not attainable, meaning the firm does not have enough resources to produce at point E. And then I thank you. This lesson was long, but I believe this lesson will have a great impact as we prepare for tomorrow. I then wish you all the best for tomorrow. I believe you will knock it down. And remember, we have about 40 days remaining before we write our paper 1 on the 31st of October. So whatever you learn now, accumulate even more. You have nothing to forget now. You must keep on increasing the knowledge and information so that you get ready for paper 1 and paper 2 that will be written also on the 7th of November. So there is a worksheet here that consists of all of these questions that I've been discussing here. Also, for you to get the memorandum for these questions, you must receive, or you must also concur with this this presentation and our previous presentation for paper 2. That's where you will be getting the memorandum for these activities that are included or attached in this presentation. I'm Mr. Mhlongo. I thank you. I believe you are enjoying economics, and I believe you will make your educators proud as you will knock this paper down. All the best.